Senator Elizabeth Warren, Democrat from Massachusetts, joins us now. The sock puppet nickname really caught on, Senator Warren. Did he convince you anything otherwise?
Look, he really had one main job to do, and that was demonstrate some independence, because we all understand why we need an independent Fed. We need people who are going to make decisions based on the numbers as best they can, that they'll look at the employment numbers and they'll look at the inflation numbers and they'll look at what's happening with tariffs, and they'll do their best job. And we may disagree with them. I often disagree with how they analyze it, but they are doing their best based on the numbers, on their analysis of the economy. What Donald Trump wants is a Fed that is under his control. He wants a sock puppet, and he's been very clear about that. And it's not just he's expressed that desire. He's threatened to fire the current Federal Reserve chair. He's brought bogus criminal charges against him. He's tried to fire another Fed governor, and he's tried to control the Fed. And you have to ask yourself, why is he doing this and who's going to push back? And he's doing it, look, because he's in real trouble on the economy. He promised on day one that he would lower prices. And where are we now? Prices are up for groceries, prices are up for housing, prices are up for health care, prices are up for gasoline, prices are up for utilities because of Donald Trump's policies. So his hope is that he can control the Fed and somehow create more special Donald Trump chaos and skate on past Election Day in November. Kevin Warsh's job yesterday was just to show just a little tiny bit of independence, and he just couldn't do that.
I think and some would argue that he did. I mean, he said that it's up to me to be independent and not influenced by the president. I think it was a bit of a trap to ask him about the election, to get him to disagree with President Trump. No Fed chair is going to weigh in on politics like that in the election results.
So, look, I asked him a fact, but here's the deal. I asked Kevin Warsh when he was in my office a week ago, how would I know you're independent? Tell me about you. Tell me how you're going to be independent. You know what he told me? He said, I'm a tough guy. I am the guy who can stand up to Donald Trump. Okay, you can look him in the eye and say something Donald Trump doesn't want to hear. So I tested that. Who won the 2020 election? Nope, couldn't say anything. I said, okay, let me just open it up. Just tell me something in the economic area that you disagree with Donald Trump on. You think he might just the tiniest place where Donald Trump might be wrong.
But for Fed chairs to disagree with politicians and presidents, that threatens their very independence. If he were to do that, Jay Powell wouldn't do that. Janet Yellen wouldn't do that.
If we have a Fed chair who is listening to a president of the United States who said, oh, tariffs don't cost anything. Oh, blockade in the Strait of Hormuz does not raise prices. Oh, prices are not going up. We have a president who thinks he can bend reality. We need a Fed chair who can actually assert reality. That was the test I was looking for. Kevin Warsh can't do it.
I mean, you yourself have been very outspoken on this show and otherwise on what the Fed should be doing. You also advocated for Lael Brainerd and Janet Yellen, who you were aligned with on policy views. I mean, this isn't that different, with the president expressing what he wants in terms of policy and who he wants.
I'm sorry. Is that real? It is not different to just say, here's my opinion, and here's how I read the numbers, and here's who I think has a good track record. You think that's the same as being the president of the United States and employing the Department of Justice to bring criminal charges against someone? Sending someone a notice that they have been fired? Donald Trump is not expressing an opinion. Donald Trump is trying to control the Fed. You know it, and I know it. And what he's also trying to do is to control the Fed by terrifying all of them.
Then why didn't you ask Kevin Warsh about that? Why didn't you ask Kevin Warsh about the criminal investigation against Chair Powell?
We did. And do you know what he said? I asked him in my office. He said, I'm not going to comment on that because it's an ongoing investigation. Now, I could have spent 45 seconds having him say the same thing again, but he told every one of us the same thing. You'll get no comment from me on that, because that's what Kevin Warsh is doing. Exactly what you'd expect a sock puppet to do. Uncomfortable questions, he just says, I'm not going to answer them. I will not answer them, and I have nothing that I can disagree, not a single fact that I can disagree with Donald Trump on. I got to tell you, if the sock
for the central
fits,
casting thing,
and it sure does for him.
The central casting joke he disagreed with.
Yeah, that was really adorable.
Senator, what would you say to the thought that the president's influence over Kevin Warsh probably peaks before he actually gets in the job, assuming he's confirmed, considering that the Federal Reserve Chair's term runs well beyond the end of President Trump's? Yes, you're right. He has attempted or threatened to fire Jay Powell, but has not done so. And the Supreme Court seems to have put up a signal that it wouldn't be possible. In other words, once in the job as part of a committee that sets rates, then the influence of the president might be lessened or dissipated.
You know, it's a reasonable question, except for what Kevin Warsh has already said. Kevin Warsh himself has said, well, the only thing I actually have to be independent on is monetary policy. He said, I can open the door in the rest of the Fed's activities. And first of all, I never saw any part of I'm partially independent, I'm partly independent, I'm a little independent. But set that aside for a minute. Think about this. The Fed may sign off on, I don't know, the next big giant bank to come along. Suppose Donald Trump decides he wants his crypto outfit to become a big bank. Or suppose Donald Trump says, I want a couple of my buddies to be bailed out of a financial crisis. Kevin Warsh has already said the door is open. The man has told us himself that he is willing to be Donald Trump's sock puppet. And I think that's disqualifying.
I wanted to also ask you about private credit, because there are concerns in the private credit world. And we talked to Treasury Secretary Besson about this at our conference last week, Invest in America. And he went on a little bit of a background about why he thinks that we do have these problems and why private credit has gotten so big to begin with. And he actually called you out on this. Just have a listen.
Spring into existence because it was filling a need that the regulated financial system was in this regulatory straitjacket, and now we are trying to put them on a level playing field. You know, there was an arbitrage between the regulated industry, the unregulated industry, and the banks have lots of lending capacity. We saw 50% of small and community banks disappear since the GFC. So, you know, like when Elizabeth Warren says, oh, I'm worried about the banking system, well, she killed it. She killed Main Street banks. And
that's a good headline.
And Main Street banks, they drive Main Street lending. It is the commercial, small business loans, ag loans.
Just wanted to give you the chance to respond, Senator, to the accusation that you killed the banks because you overregulated.
So, first of all, it's a little hard to call the banks overregulated when just 3 years ago, the second, third, and fourth biggest bank failures in America occurred because they were underregulated. Secondly, it's a little tough to hear Secretary Besson say boo-hoo about losing those community banks. I hate that we're losing those community banks. But the reason? Mostly because they're getting bought up by the too big to fail banks. In other words, those giants just keep getting bigger. But listen to his overall argument. He says, we have a system right now in which we have regulated financial institutions and unregulated financial institutions side by side. It's just what we had back in 2008. And he says that creates a real problem because the real risky stuff goes over to the unregulated. You've got two answers. His answer, Secretary Besson, is, hey, deregulate the regulated. You know what banking system he wants? The one we had right up until 1933. Just deregulated banks and they crash. The alternative is to say we need better regulation over the private credit market so that this arbitrage is not so extreme. And so at least we can get some vision into the kind of risk that is building up in the Senate. And Scott Bessent has got every part of that argument upside down.
Is that something you're working on? Private credit legislation?
Yes, but good luck on getting some Republicans on that one.
I do wonder, Senator, it occurred to me watching you yesterday. I mean, it's possible that the Democratic Party will win the Senate. I assume you'd become the chair of that committee, correct? And I'm just curious if, in fact, that were to take place, what your priorities might be.
I don't think I'm quite understanding the question. My priorities are that we have a good, strong economy, that we don't have Donald Trump's driving prices up, that we actually, I'll pick one specifically that's a priority. I hope get through a housing bill that will help increase housing supply across this country and help beat private equity out of the housing market. And by golly, we got it through the Banking Committee unanimously. We got it through the Senate by a very large majority. Donald Trump claims to be on board for it, but he's not pushing the House of Representatives to do anything. We're in a housing crisis in America. Prices are through the roof. We need more housing. And if Donald Trump would make a few calls over to the folks in the House of Representatives, which is still controlled by Republicans, we could get this bill through and actually do some good for the American people. So you want to know my priorities? That's the top of the list.
I wanted to ask you about Iran because you've been very outspoken lately against the president and the war. And I do wonder, Senator, if you ever worry that by being so outspoken and trashing the president over this, that it weakens our hand and weakens our negotiating position at a critical moment where we're trying to get an Iran that's more peaceful for the region and for the world and not a nuclear power.
Donald Trump weakens Donald Trump's hand. When he starts out by starting this war without ever consulting with the American people about it, and in the first days, he cannot describe why the war started, what the purpose of the war is, what we hope to accomplish. And then, how many times a day does Donald Trump say something that is either factually inaccurate or just contradicts himself? Donald Trump has stood up and said he is going to obliterate an entire civilization, commit war crimes in the name of the American people. Donald Trump is trashing America's credibility and America's reputation as a moral authority all around the world.
Do you not agree with the ultimate goal here?
Which goal? You mean the one to have the Obama agreement in place?
Not have advanced missiles that it can terrorize all of its neighbors, which we've seen it do. To not have a nuclear Iran.
Of course.
To not have it fund terrorists all over the world. I mean, we don't want to go into North Korea. It's too late.
Of course, and that is why I supported the agreement that Iran had signed that stopped its nuclear program. And yet, Donald Trump tore that up. And you know what Mr. Dealmaker got in return? Nothing. Zero. And now we are in a far worse position because of Donald Trump's chaos. You know, you described to me what's Donald Trump's exit ramp here and how it is that the United States of America is going to be better off.
I think he said he wants to make a negotiation.
Can I finish my answer?
Please.
Having lost 13 Americans, having spent $1 billion a day overseas blowing stuff up, having an act of war to blockade and driving up prices here at home. How are people in America better off? Donald Trump has managed with this war to make people at home less safe, to make people at home more stretched financially, and just to trash our reputation all around the world.
I mean, that's a whole can of worms that we could get into, but we're limited on time. So I did want to ask you, Senator Warren, about something else that happened last weekend, which is you campaigned with Graham Plattner, who is ahead of that state's very pivotal Democratic primary. And I wanted to ask you about something you said. You said he's your kind of man. And I've interviewed you for a long time and watched your hearings and listened to your questions. You care about character. This is a guy that had a chest tattoo with a Nazi symbol. Okay, he apologized for it. It's a guy that reportedly wrote that people concerned about rape should take some responsibility for themselves and not get so effed up that they wind up having sex with someone they don't mean to. He praised military tactics used by Hamas, reportedly, in comments online and Reddit when they were murdering Israeli soldiers. So I'm just curious why you think he's your kind of man.
So, as you rightly point out, he has apologized. He's out meeting with the people of Maine every single day so they can evaluate not who Graham Plattner was, but who Graham Plattner is today. And let me tell you exactly how that comment came to be. I was describing how I didn't know Graham Plattner from anybody, and I'm reading an interview with him, and he's asked, when did you first know that the game was rigged? And he harks back to the 2008 crash when 10 million families lost their homes, when 8 million people lost their jobs, when millions of people lost their savings, and when big banks cheated folks, when non-bank financial institutions tricked them, robbed them of their homes. And Graham Plattner's answer on when he knew the game was rigged was when not one banker went to jail. And I said, that's my kind of man.
Okay, well, I dig it next to a video of a bunch of terrorists killing 5 soldiers. I don't know. I mean, you guys want to be the party of inclusivity, right?
I want to be the party that stands up for hardworking people. I want to be the party that is transformative of an economy that right now is hip deep in corruption, and an economy that's working for a handful of billionaires and multi-millionaires and not working for much of anyone else. I want us to be the party that actually delivers on lowering costs and that expands opportunities. And that's what Graham Plattner wants to do. And I'm there to stand with him and to help in that fight.